My name is Veronica. I am 33 years old, and until recently, I believed I was one of the luckiest women alive. My husband William, who is 38, was gentle, thoughtful, and endlessly kind. He was the kind of man who remembered the little things, who held my hand for no reason, who made our home feel warm even on the coldest days. I loved my husband. He was my best friend, my safe place, the person I trusted more than anyone in the world. Our life together felt steady, peaceful, and full of love. But everything changed in a single phone call. One Tuesday afternoon, while I was teaching at school, my phone rang. A serious voice asked, "Are you Veronica, the wife of William?" My heart dropped instantly. The person continued, "Your husband was in an accident. He is at the city hospital. You need to come immediately." I could not breathe. My hands shook. I whispered, "Please, please be okay," again and again as I rushed to the hospital. When William finally opened his eyes, I reached for his hand and smiled through tears. But he stared at me with confusion and said, "Who are you?" In one moment, I went from wife to stranger. 10 years ago, my life changed in the most unexpected and beautiful way. I met William in a small coffee shop near my school. He accidentally spilled his coffee all over my shoes, and he was so embarrassed that he almost couldn't speak. I laughed, and he insisted on buying me a new drink. What surprised me was how naturally we started talking after that. One minute we were strangers, and the next it felt like we had known each other for years. That simple accident became the beginning of everything. At the time, he was a book writer who worked from home, always surrounded by notebooks and ideas. I was a primary school teacher living a quiet, predictable life. But once we met, predictability disappeared. We saw each other every day. We walked together, ate together, talked about dreams, fears, and silly little things. He made life feel soft and warm. I remember the day he proposed. We were in our favorite park. His hands were shaking as he asked, "Veronica, will you marry me?" I cried and said yes without a doubt in my heart. Our wedding was small but full of love. For 5 years, we were inseparable, best friends, true partners. I truly believe nothing in this world could ever break us. I was wrong. The day everything changed began like any ordinary Tuesday. I was in my classroom, teaching my students about simple fractions, when my phone buzzed. Normally, I never answer during class, but something inside me told me to pick it up. The moment I heard the serious voice on the other end ask, "Are you Veronica, the wife of William?" my blood turned cold. "Yes, what happened?" I whispered. "There has been an accident. Your husband is at the city hospital. You need to come immediately." Time stopped. The classroom disappeared. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. My colleague saw my face drain of color and rushed to me. Within minutes, she was driving me to the hospital while I sat in silence, praying, "Please be okay, William, please." When I arrived, the doctor told me words I could barely process. William had been hit by a car. His head injury was severe. They had performed emergency surgery. He was alive, but unstable. Then came the warning I didn't understand at first. He may experience memory loss. We cannot predict the extent yet. For 3 days, I never left his side. I held his hand, stroked his hair, whispered stories of us, our park, our coffee shop, our wedding. I begged him softly, please come back to me. And then, on the third day, his fingers moved. The doctor rushed in. William slowly opened his eyes. He looked around the room, first at the doctor, then at the nurse, and finally at me. My heart burst with relief. William, I whispered, it's me, Veronica, your wife. He frowned. His voice was weak, confused. Who are you? I don't know her. Those words stabbed deeper than any knife. Outside the room, the doctor explained gently what I never imagined hearing. The part of his brain holding emotional memories, the years of love, of marriage, of us, was damaged. He remembered general facts, common knowledge, even his own name. But not me. Not our life. Not our love. 10 years together, gone in an instant. When he was discharged, the doctor suggested bringing him home, hoping familiar surroundings might trigger something. But as we stood at our front door, William simply said, so, this is your house? Not our house. Yours. That first dinner together was heartbreaking. I cooked his favorite roast chicken. He ate quietly and finally said, thank you. The food is very good. He sounded like a polite guest. That night, I lay beside him, my husband, yet a complete stranger. And for the first time, I realized the truth. I was sleeping next to a man who no longer knew he once loved me. In the first weeks after bringing William home, I refused to accept reality. I believed, no, I needed to believe, that if I tried hard enough, he would remember me. So I did everything I could to pull him back into the past we shared. I took him to the little coffee shop where we first met. I smiled and told him the story of how he spilled coffee on my shoes. He laughed politely and said, I must have been very clumsy, but there was no spark of recognition. It was like he was listening to someone else's love story. I brought him to our favorite park, the place where he had once nervously asked me to marry him. I pointed at the bench where he knelt with the ring. He stared at it for a moment, then simply said, it's a nice spot. No emotion, no memory, nothing. At home, I showed him our wedding album. He looked at the photos of us smiling, dancing, holding hands, but his eyes stayed empty. He looks happy, he said, as if the man in the pictures was a stranger who merely resembled him. His mother hugged him and cried in his arms, but he stood stiffly, unable to feel the bond they once had. Our friends visited him, told funny stories about things we did together, and he would smile out of politeness, but I could see it all felt foreign to him. Every night, I lay beside him, but it felt like lying next to a ghost of the man I loved. I am sleeping next to the face I married, but not the soul. One night, completely exhausted, I broke down in front of my best friend Adeline. I feel like I am losing him a little more every day, I sobbed. Adeline held my hands and said something that changed everything. Maybe you are trying too hard to bring the old William back. Maybe you need to get to know the new William. Her words hit me like a truth I had been refusing to see. I had been fighting to revive a past that was gone instead of seeing the man who was right in front of me, confused, scared, trying his best. The next day, I stopped talking about the past. I talked about my students, my day, silly things that happened at school. For the first time, William looked curious. "What do you teach?" he asked. "What are your students like?" Slowly, we started having real conversations, simple, warm, present. We were not husband and wife anymore. We were two people meeting for the first time. Then came the moment that changed everything. One afternoon, I came home exhausted and fell asleep on the sofa. When I opened my eyes, William was standing there with a cup of coffee. "You looked tired," he said softly. "I made you coffee." I burst into tears. Not because of the coffee, but because, for the first time since the accident, he cared. He cared. On our wedding anniversary, he still didn't remember. I sat alone with our album, crying quietly. William found me, sat beside me, and whispered, "I'm sorry. I'm not that man in the pictures. Maybe you should be free, free to find someone who can love you the way you deserve." Through my tears, I looked at him, this gentle, broken, new version of the man I once knew, and realized something shocking. "I loved the man in these pictures," I said. "But I am also starting to love the man sitting in front of me." And in that moment, I chose not the past, but the possibility of a new future with him. When William and I sat together on our anniversary night, both crying for different reasons, something inside us quietly shifted. We could keep chasing the past, or we could choose to build something new. For the first time, he reached for my hand not out of duty, not out of confusion, but out of a genuine human connection. That night, we made a decision together. We would not divorce. We would not force memories to return. We would begin again, slowly, gently, like two strangers choosing to fall in love. So we started dating, almost awkwardly at first. We walked in the park and talked about simple things. He asked about my favorite books, my students, the food I liked. I learned new things about him too, his fears, his humor, the way he thought now. It felt strange, tender, and painful at the same time. One evening, as we sat on a bench watching the sunset, he looked at me quietly and said, "Veronica, I think I am falling in love with you." I broke into tears. It hurt because he didn't remember loving me before. But it healed me because he was choosing to love me now. A year after the accident, he surprised me. He took me to the same park where he had once proposed, though he did not remember the moment. He got down on one knee and pulled out a small velvet box. "I cannot remember the first promise," he said softly. "But I want to make a new one. Will you marry me again?" My heart burst open. "Yes," I whispered through tears. We stood in the same place, but we were not the same people. And that was the beauty of it. Our love was beginning again, stronger because we chose it twice. Now, looking back at everything we went through, I finally understand something I could not see before. I used to believe that love lived in photographs, in memories, in all the stories we had collected over the years. But when those memories disappeared, I learned a truth I never expected. Love is not only about remembering. Love is about choosing. When William woke up and looked at me like a stranger, I felt my heart die a little. But life was teaching me something quietly, painfully. Sometimes the past must disappear so the truth of the present can be seen clearly. I learned that love is not guaranteed by the years you spend together. It is built again and again through patience, presence, and the courage to stay when everything feels broken. William could not remember the woman I once was, but he began to love the woman standing in front of him. And I learned to stop chasing the past, and instead open my heart to the man he had become. Sometimes the person you loved becomes a stranger. But sometimes, that stranger becomes the person you fall in love with all over again. And that, I learned, is another kind of miracle. If you liked this story, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thank you for learning English through stories with me, and I truly hope to see you again in the next video.